What's up? Getting a little bit of a hum on the mics, but it's good to see you guys again. It's always an honor and a pleasure to get to be in worship with you all, and I am really excited just about where we are um, right now as a church. This being the beginning of 2020, and does anybody remember what our focus is for this year? God specs. That's right. Oh, before we get there, don't forget notes, don't forget videos, and don't forget questions. So, same old, same old. God specs. Yeah, there we go. God specs. So our focus and our goal and our hope is that 2020, which commonly is referred to or referenced as perfect vision, that by the end of this year, that what we see would much more line up with what God sees. That when we look at the excuse me, the events and the activities that happen in our lives, that we would be much more inclined to view them the way that God views them, as opposed to looking at them through our own short-sighted, limited, finite perspective, understanding, and capacity. And so, with that, I thought it was important for us at the beginning of this year to take an opportunity to get a better vision and a better understanding of who we are as a church and what we currently do as a church. And so for this first month and a half of Wednesdays, we are going to use this time to take an opportunity to better understand who we are as a church. And the way that we're going to do that is by sitting down and having conversations with our leadership team. And so each Wednesday, we'll sit with a different leader who serves in a different capacity, and it will give you not only the opportunity to get to know more about what they do and how they do it, but also hopefully the plan is that it will give you opportunity to be able to get to know them a little bit more. We look at our church, right? We look at it and understand what we really do and the value that we really bring to the community, but also where the Lord is leading us, so that we can be all on the same page, be in the same and be in agreement with where we're going, so that we can be supportive of where we're growing. And we talked about on actually the last two Sundays, because Courtney referenced it in her message last month, and then of course this past Sunday I referenced it in my sermon, Habakkuk 2:2, which encourages us to write the vision and make it plain. Well, this course, this series, gives us the opportunity to be able to make sure that the vision that has been written for these different areas of ministry, that it is very plain. So even though this is a conversation, it's not just a conversation between us, but it's a conversation between all of us. And I am just the facilitator of that conversation. So if at any point you would like additional clarity, or you have a question or anything like that, this is going to be your opportunity to be able to do that. By the end of this 6 weeks, everybody should be very clear about what it is Church on Purpose does, and where it is we're growing. Okay. So to kick off this the beginning of this series, which is entitled "Connecting Church," I was trying to think of everyone that's a part of our leadership team, and who should get it started and who should kick it off. And when I posed the question to our leadership team, she actually volunteered, and I was like, well, I would hope so, because aside from me, she's supposed to know more about Church on Purpose than anybody. And so tonight we're gonna connect with Kingdom Kids Ministry, and of course our Kingdom Kids leader here at Church on Purpose is none other than Miss Jene Chapman, a lady that I know pretty well but I will give her the opportunity to go ahead and kind of introduce herself, reintroduce herself, just talk a little bit about who she is and what she does, and then we'll kind of get into some of the additional questions from there.
So, my name is Jene Chapman.
You guys speak up.
My name is Jene Chapman, and here at Church on Purpose, I am the Kingdom Kids Coordinator. Of course, you see me here on Sunday mornings and Wednesdays leading worship, but my main purpose is, and my passion, are children. And so that is what I am doing here on Church on Purpose. What's more?
Yeah, what else do you do?
Outside of
Yeah.
church. So outside of church, I am a program specialist at the Department of Education, Office of Early Childhood. Hey, I'm still working with children. Actually, I'm kind of removed from children, but I'm working to improve their education. And so that is what I will be doing. I know a long time ago when I went to school, actually before I went to school, that my passion and my drive was children. And I knew that when I set up all my little children, Barbie dolls and baby dolls on the stoop, and I started teaching. And my mama said, "Oh, you're gonna be a teacher just like me." And I said, "Nope, I'm gonna be a doctor." And she said, "Nope, you're going to be a teacher." And I said, "Nope." And, we went back and forth. That's where Jada gets it from. Pray for me. And so, and so I realized after the fact, when it came time for me to apply for college, like, that was my passion. That's what I wanted to do. I started when I was 6 years old teaching, Barbie dolls and doll babies, and then at our church back in Virginia, I started out in the nursery ministry and teaching VBS, and I was only an 11th grader teaching. And it was so amazing one time that all of the teachers that were older than me brought their children to my class, and I had about 100 children and had their attention. And so from then on, I knew as soon as I went to college that that was something that I was going to do. And so that's what I did. I proceeded on to teach and use my passion, my drive for what God called me to do right then and there. Keep going.
So, talk a little bit about, because of course you have this passion for children that was identified very early in your life, but talk about that journey from knowing that teaching was an avenue for you to be able to utilize or express that passion for children. Talk a little bit about that journey from venturing into teaching to how you got to where you are with your position with the State Department of Education.
So as a teacher, you come across a lot of students with challenges, and they used to give me a lot of challenging behaviors. And I didn't see them as a challenge. I saw them as an opportunity for me to grow as a person and as a teacher. And I knew that there were other children out there that I was going to come in contact with. So I made sure that I stayed up on my trainings. I did everything that was possible to make sure that I could provide the best opportunity for my children. I taught in the urban setting, and as you know, urban setting, low income housings around the school system. And so a lot of times I had to give out of my own pocket to make sure that my children had what they needed. And it wasn't just books and supplies for school. It was, clothes for school. It was food. I mean, like any and everything that a child needed, I provided it for them. And so once I realized that, I went back to school because I needed to find a new way to reach other teachers to figure out what their drive was, what if this was really where they needed to be, because many people know, like, children will test you. And you have to be dedicated. You got to be dedicated and driven and have that passion in order to stick to it. And so as my teaching time came, I saw a lot of different teachers. I had a lot of different teachers. Majority of my teachers were amazing, which is one of the reasons why I'm a teacher. But then I had some of those teachers that were horrible. And I said I did not want a kid to ever have a teacher like that. So how can I change that? So I went back to school and for educational administration, and got my master's degree in that. And so after I got that, had a baby. And I knew that, I didn't want to spend all this time with other people's children. I knew I wanted to spend time with my own. And so I took a couple of years off to spend that time with my children. First it was just Jada and David. And then as time progressed, I said, you know what, I got to get back in the field because they need me. And so we moved to Nebraska. And once we moved to Nebraska, I got my foot in the door in one of the preschools, which was my first heart. But I knew that it was not going to be the only place that I stopped.
Partly because it was an hour drive to Lincoln.
Yes, that was horrible. I knew that, one, I couldn't devote so much time to other people's children and not devote time to my own children. And so I had to stop that job and move closer to home. But I stayed into the preschool field. And then I realized that my patience was running a little thin. And I realized, again, a little bright light hit me when I was the youngest in my teaching area where I was teaching. I was the youngest, and I was giving advice to older, people that have been in the field longer than I have. About, different techniques on behavior, on, social and emotional, on, just teaching in general, like how to actually reach a child and be successful and be fulfilled and still have a balanced life outside of the classroom. And so I said, how can I do that? Well, how many know God works in mysterious ways? And so then I start searching and looking, and then I find a job, and it says the Department of Education. I said, and here's what the devil does. He tells you, oh no, you're not qualified for that. You can't do that. You need a doctorate, you need all of these extra fields, and you've just been in, you've worked in the school system, but you really haven't been an administrator, so you don't know what that's about. So I downplayed it, and then I started reading, my word, and reading a book called Fervent Prayer. Really? Are we going to shout music real quick? But yeah, started reading and praying and interceding and asking God, like, what do you want me to do? Because I can't sleep at night. I can't breathe when I go into my classroom. Like, I'm there, but I'm not there, and that's not doing any good to my kids right now. And so that opened up a door for me to interview for the Department of Education here in Nebraska. And I walked in, and I sat down, and of course, I was a little nervous, but God kind of brought a peace over me and said, you got this. And so I just started talking about all of my different experiences from, teaching in, urban setting, from, instructing older, wiser women on how to teach their, their classes, and, talking about the different events that I did and all this other stuff. And by the end of the interview, I saw nothing but smiles, and then I got a call back a day later and said, you have the job. And I said, are you for real? And this is the department head, I'm like, are you really, you want me? And so I took on that position as program specialist, and now I am able to help so many teachers across Nebraska, whether it is from birth, they teach birth, all the way up to 8 years old. I help them with launching their own businesses, childcare businesses, finding trainings that fit with what they're doing. I help people find their calling and their passion. Like, you just don't have to be a teacher. You can be an owner of a childcare, or you can be a director, I help teachers become trainers for the state. So it's a lot of different things. I help orchestrate, how they structure trainings and how they, present them to people. And so all of that to say, I love what I do. And if you don't love what you do, then you need to find what you love. Somebody say amen. So yeah, it took me on a journey. I'm not gonna say it was an easy journey. I shared a little bit of my personal fears and doubts with Courtney one time. She was going through some stuff. And how many of you heard of the Praxis exam? That's a beast. And I took that exam, I don't know how many times.
7.
Yeah, there you go. There, I lost count. 7 times. And I did not pass it. I got through the first portion of it, but couldn't succeed. And so when you can't do that, when you can't pass it, you can't become a teacher. So that was my first block. And I said, well, I guess I give up that. What else can I do now? And God was like, nope, I'm gonna open this door right here. So I went ahead and I applied for a teaching position as a first grade teacher and got that teaching position. They said, you know what, don't worry about it. 3 years, we're gonna help you with passing this practice exam. I'm like, yes. Didn't pass it. They were like, oh no, okay, all right. The school was closing because it was an older school. So the school closed and I moved closer back to home and got a job as a teacher. Stayed there, I think 3 or 4 years?
2.
2?
Before David was born.
Yeah, 2 years. Then David came along, and then we moved to Nebraska. And I say all of that to say, don't let roadblocks stop you. Because when you have a purpose that God gives you, He's gonna make sure that you do what you're supposed to do with it. It might not be what you want to do with it, it's gonna be what He wants you to do with it. And so I say, keep pressing. You want me to hoop too?
I'm pressing the button. You say keep pressing.
So yeah, that was my journey. It wasn't an easy journey. It was something that I needed to go on so that I could be able to help other people when they go through the same thing, just letting them know, hey, keep pressing. Like, you're going to have these roadblocks and you're going to doubt yourself all the time. And I'm not going to say don't doubt yourself because you're human. But do know that you serve a God that can do any and everything and change stuff around for your good.
So you talked about kind of some of the plans that you had and the way that you wanted things to work out and how they ended up not working out that way, but you were still able to make your way to this place where you're in this position of influence with all of these people, able to impact all these kids. What do you think your life would have been like had one of those opportunities that didn't work out, had it worked out?
That's hard to say. I don't even know. I think I would have just kept on doing what I was doing because I love kids. In the middle of staying home, with David and Jada, ended up, opening up our home to other mothers, young mothers, single parents or parents that worked a lot. Opened up my home and started an in-home childcare, and so go figure, I would be working with childcare providers, in-home childcare providers, on that same very thing. So I think I just would have kept on going until he said, this is the direction you need to go. It's the next step.
So the reason I asked that question is because I find it rather ironic that, and it's interesting how the Lord, and we don't even see it, but how the Lord prepares us for what he's getting ready to do in our lives. And it's not just from an equipping standpoint, but sometimes it's when our prayers don't work out the way that we wish they would. It's not until, they say hindsight is what? Oh, it's 2020. And so this year we're also praying that the Lord brings some clarity to some stuff that already happened in your life that you don't understand yet. But it's interesting because in my mind, had she passed the praxis in Virginia, she would have, because of her skill, because of her connections, she would have had a rather lucrative teaching position and been positioned in some really great places and spaces. For myself, had the supervisor position worked out for me at the rec center, I would have been making more money. Well, no, not making more money than I ever made in my life, but I would have been getting paid to do what I love to do. And had we been in those positions,
we wouldn't be here.
When I came to Nebraska and the Lord called us to plant a church in Omaha, I don't necessarily know that we would have been able to as easily to disconnect from our lives there in Virginia and be able to relocate here. And I think if you had to choose between being an elementary school teacher or working for the State Department, having the level of influence that you have, I would assume you would choose where you are now.
Yes.
And so let that be an encouragement to you that sometimes when opportunities don't work out, it really is truly because the Lord has something better for you, and something to position you in greater places and spaces for the kind of influence that he wants you to have. So you mentioned when you were just kind of recounting your journey, you mentioned that you served as a vacation Bible school teacher, but talk a little bit about how you ended up working with kids in church and then some of the experiences that you had there, kind of before I came along in youth ministry, then talk a little bit about what we were able to do in youth ministry back home and how that then influences your vision for Kingdom Kids here.
So I grew up in a small church back in Virginia, Gethsemane Community Fellowship Baptist Church. Yes, that is a long name. We call it Garden, the Garden for short. And in that place, they cultivated and nurtured your gifts. And so my pastor back then and the first lady there knew that I loved to teach and they knew that I loved to sing. So those were the two things that they made sure that every opportunity that I had, I was exposed to what was going to help me in the long run. And with that, I was able to see great teachers, to influence the way that I taught children. I went to many churches with my friends and went to like their children's church or to their teen Bible study, and the stuff just went over my head. And it shouldn't be like that for kids. But when I went back to my home church, and my teachers taught me, it was something that I was able to apply it to my life, and that I understood why it is we do what we do. And so with that knowledge and background, I was given the opportunity to be the nursery coordinator at our church. I had just graduated from college and came back from Virginia State to start being the nursery coordinator. And the first lady said, "You do whatever you want to do." And I was involved in the plans of the church. So we built a new church. And so I was in the plans of what the nursery area was going to look like, what needed to be in the nursery area, and all that stuff. And so that gave me a little bit of insight on what it meant to have my own ministry and what ministry should look like. And as a leader of a large ministry, and I was only 23, and I only had 3 other people that were about my age. Everybody else was older than me. But being able to sit down and tell people that it's not, leadership isn't the person that's on top and everything trickles down. My leadership, yes, I am the leader of this group, but we are all working together, so it's like a circular motion. And so being able to relay that and people to understand that we were able to do a lot of things in ministry, where we had, we were given the opportunity to have a Tiny Tots carnival. And my pastor back then said, "Whatever you want, we will do it, Jene." And I said, "Don't tell me that." And so being able to have that opportunity to have the Tiny Tots Carnival, where I felt like there was nothing for our babies. Everything was for the older kids, and it was nothing for the babies. So that's why we had Tiny Tots Carnival. We had carnival rides, we had singing, we had dancing, we had clowns, we had, I mean, you name it, we had it. It was a carnival. And it grew each and every year to be very large. And so having that opportunity to do that, as well as be in charge of Vacation Bible School and be the curriculum specialist. So figure out what exactly, teachings were going to be taught to all the different age groups. So not just the babies, but the babies all the way up to adults, So that gave me some opportunity. And then after that, I was given the opportunity with Jonathan, to work with Jonathan on a, what is it, youth conference? I think it was. I don't remember. Yeah, that's when he started to try to talk to me. Yeah. So we were working on a youth conference, youth retreat. It was a youth retreat. And so given that opportunity then to work with actual teenagers, because by then, of course, I was the curriculum specialist for Vacation Bible School, so I came up with, what they had to be taught, but I didn't have to actually teach teenagers. And so given that opportunity to work in that particular setting gave me some more experience. And so after that became the children's ministry coordinator. And after that, Jonathan and I got married. So he had the youth ministry as a whole, where he just really focused on the middle on up to college. And I focused on elementary on down. And so he had half of the ministry and I had half of, the ministry.
I had more like 80%.
Whatever. I had a whole lot of kids.
You have a whole lot of kids.
I did. And a whole lot of workers. So anyway, he likes to interrupt me too. And anyway, so just having those opportunities to be a leader, as well as be around other leaders to show me the way. They were a lot of leaders that we had in the past at our old church. They were very influential to the way that I teach, to the way that I respond to people, and to let me know that it's okay to be a leader and fail. But you gotta admit that you failed, and say that I'm gonna do better. But yeah, that's it.
So again, so kind of tie it together with how your experience working with children there and just your overall passion for children. How when Church on Purpose comes on the scene, how you end up back in that same space of working with children.
So I think with the experience that I've had for several years working with children at our old church, helped me to know really my role in the foundations of Church on Purpose. I know that I'm not going to always be in this role, but I know I want to set it up to where our kids and whoever takes on will have that solid foundation of where it should be, as far as in the teaching and how we relate and bring everybody together. So I knew right away that that was going to be the place that was going to need me the most in the beginning.
So take it back to the beginning. So of course, when we started the church, October of 2016, in the basement at the house, what kind of things were you doing for the kids then, and what kind of things were you thinking about in terms of being able to serve the kids at that particular stage?
So back then, it was only the Chapman kids, but I knew that we were going to grow. And just because it was a small number and just because it was my children doesn't mean that I would lack, wouldn't give them my all if we had like 10 kids. It should be the same. And so back then, we started off with the activity sheets that catered to whatever the sermon was, and the kids would pick the sheets up before they sat down and kind of color them. And then once reflection groups came, then we kind of sat down and talked about, well, what did you color today or whatever. And I knew that was what I wanted to build upon when it came to having more children. And so each year we kind of build on it. So the following year, we got the tablets. And the kids would come in, grab a tablet, during, the sermon. That would be the only time that they would get the tablet during the sermon, and they would have their own individual lesson on the tablet, like the video and all this other stuff, and then they would have to answer questions on their activity sheet. And so we started growing a little bit larger, so we're trying to work out some kinks. I'm like, all right, we're going to keep buying these tablets, or what are we going to do? We're going to start pulling them out. So we started pulling the kids out on whatever particular Sunday it was, where they would have their full lesson. And then on the Wednesdays, they would also have full lessons. And then when the Adele family came, I said, oh man, I got some helpers. And so the girls, during that time, we would still do pull-outs. And on Wednesdays, we would pull them out, and they would have their lesson with me, but then the girls would finish up to make sure that everybody did their activities. So it was like a leader. And then they would take turns, each kid would take turns being the leader to make sure that the activities were done, that they were all ready for the reflection groups and things like that. And so when we moved into the new place, we kind of kept with the same feel.
So some churches, for families, activities and attention for children is extremely important. Some churches go to the extreme of really kind of creating a separate church atmosphere where a family walks in the door, but then the children go this way, the parents go this way, and they don't see each other until the end of service. Some churches go to the opposite extreme where they just don't provide anything for the children and everyone worships together all the time. So talk a little bit about your approach to the special lesson times for the kids here. Talk a little bit about the schedule, why the schedule is the way that it is.
So I first start off telling you about the schedule. So Kingdom Kids meets on the first Sunday of every month. They have their full lesson. The same amount of time that the sermon's going on, they're having their own individual lesson in the back. They we start off with the opener. We do different activities, hands-on. We do memory verses. We play games, and then we have like a rap session to like really dig deep and talk about like what the lesson is all about and what did they gain from the lesson, because that's what's most important, is to make sure that I tell the kids all the time, I only have 3 rules, is that you respect one another when someone's talking, and is that if you have a question, then you need to ask it. Like, questions are necessary, so please ask those questions. And then the third one, of course, keep your hands and your feet to yourself. And so they always laugh and like, no, she means ask all of the questions when we have new people. And you know, they're like, I got a question, but I don't want to ask it. But anyway, so that's how we structure the lesson. And then by the time they finish, they're to come back in with everybody else and join the reflection groups, and talk about what they learned from it. And they would also do on the first Wednesday of every month, this is the first Wednesday of every month, but we're here right now, it's okay. They have their separate lesson, they have their full lesson for the month, because throughout the month, they're gonna have activities that they're gonna have to do on their own. So on the Wednesdays that we do not have Kingdom Kids, we actually meet for 10 minutes and I do a short, quick lesson with them, and then they go, either they stay in with our group leaders and they do their activities, and then they come back and join us, and I time them and I check on them, and they know that I'm going to ask, did you do what you're supposed to do? And so they come back and then they are ready to reflect with the adults. And then what was the other thing? I don't forget.
The schedule and why the schedule is the way that it is at Church on Purpose.
Okay, so why the schedule is the way that it is, it's because we want to make sure that we are learning and growing together as a family unit. I was in charge of a children's ministry where we had children's church and we had nursery and we had all these different groups. And the parents were learning on something different than the children. And they would never, ever ask the children, well, what did you learn today? Well, did you see da-da-da-da-da? And I said, well, how can we bring this together? And so Jonathan and I agreed that we weren't going to pull the kids out all the time. We agreed that they have to have their lesson because kids, as we know, if you're an educator, they learn on different levels. Hi, JoJo. And so we agreed that we weren't going to pull them out, but we were going to make an emphasis and an effort to explain that to our parents, that we're here to help you and we're here to grow together as a family. And it's important for, one, our kids to learn how to sit with us during worship service because they see what we do. And it's important for them to see what their parents do, not just what their youth leaders do or what the pastor does, but they want to see you grow as well. They want to see you worship as well. So they know, because they mimic that stuff. And so we're going to all grow together, which is why we don't pull out the kids a whole lot of times. But I do encourage parents to ask those questions, during service, like, do you understand what he said? Well, go over the instructions for the worksheets, different things like that during worship service. So I will say, if they're not in on Sunday mornings, if they don't have Kingdom Kids, there are worksheets for the kids, not worksheets, but activities for the kids to pick up and bring to their seat. Because on those activities, they ask different questions about like who sung what song, what was your favorite song. So it's kind of engaging the kid, because sometimes kids go in like la la land and they're like, oh, this is boring. But it's something that they have to answer. And then later on, in reflection groups, they have something to talk about. So, yes.
So, aside from calling my sermons boring,
He did. He would pick up on that, wouldn't
Aside from all that, talk a little bit about, you talked about kind of the background and how things are right now, but talk a little bit about where you see children's ministry growing at Church on Purpose.
I see our ministry growing to the point where our children are leading the children's ministry, the Kingdom Kids ministry, where they're in front teaching a lesson and we're just the facilitators. I see where our kids aren't ashamed that they go to church. They're not ashamed to say that I'm saved and I believe in God. They're not ashamed to sit down and talk to their friends about God. They're not afraid to say, no, that's not right. You shouldn't do that. That's the kind of kids that I think that we're growing to. And I think that our kids already right now are on that path. We have some deep conversations in the back where we sit down and we kind of like dig in, discussions that you don't even think will come out of a kindergartner's mouth. But you have those type of times where Courtney will tell you, where you have to stop play practice and you literally have to sit down and talk about it. And so I think that we will be growing to have children that are strong enough to be able to stand up here and preach one Sunday.
So give us pull the curtain back a little bit and give us a little insight into some of these conversations, some of these tough discussions, and some of the questions that you get from the kids during the time.
So we have been, this past year we talked about the faith journey. So we were going through the faith journey as a whole church, and I felt like the kids needed to understand what that word faith means. And they are also going through that. Even though they are small, they're still going through a faith journey. And how can I explain it to where they understand what's going on in their lives? And so I asked the children, like, tell me a time where you felt like you were close to God. And so they were like, I don't know. And so I described a time where I felt like I was close to God. I got in a car accident, almost nearly died, and all this other stuff. So the kids were like, what? I don't have a near-death experience to talk about. And I'm like, it doesn't have to be that. The smallest person in the room decides to say, well, Mom, I do have, I already know who it is. Jada. Okay. And then you have Joy, and then you have Faith, and it just started trickling. But anyway, so the first one was, well, I remember a time where you told me that if I was scared at night, that I could call Jesus, and immediately he'll be right there with me. And so one night I got scared, and I didn't know, I forgot. She said something about I forgot, and then I remembered that I could call Jesus' name. And so she called Jesus, she said, I called Jesus' name, and then I felt at peace. And she was like, I was okay. Summary. And so, just being able to hear her say that and to say that I felt like he was closer to me warmed my heart. And then you had someone say, I remember a time where, I didn't think God was speaking to me, but he spoke to me. So it's like different things like that. Or they would have conversations about, well, what does it mean if you get baptized? Or when do I know that I need to be saved? Like questions like that. Or my friend is gay, and I don't know if I want to invite them to church. So, like questions like that to make you like, okay, gotta have this conversation. All right, here we go. Let's go. You know, um, but then not only do they ask the questions, they're able to answer them if they're not asking them. For instance, if another kid is asking the question, and I'm like, wow. Another person picks up and they're answering the question is like, I would have said the same thing. So that just like calms me down to say, you know what? You're doing what you're supposed to do. Jonathan is doing what he's supposed to do. Q's doing what he's supposed to do because they're not just getting it from me, they're getting it from each of us. All of the different words that we say, whether it be in the front of the room, whether it be at home, wherever it may be, they're getting it from us. And so I will encourage you guys to speak into their lives, to talk to them about those different things. Don't shy away from conversations that you think that they're not ready to handle, because trust me, they're ready. Yes.
So as we come to the conclusion of this, I'm going to want you all, if you have any questions, go ahead and be thinking about those. In a second, we'll open the floor for you to be able to ask Jene any questions about anything that she shared tonight or any additional questions that you have about Kingdom Kids. But before we get to those questions, of course, we know that the Lord has been doing some special stuff in you, and open up the door and giving you some new opportunities. And so this will be your last year leading Kingdom Kids in preparation for passing the torch to Ashley. And of course, we'll be having a conversation with her in a few weeks. But real quick, just talk a little bit about what the Lord is doing with you and what this next phase of your journey is going to look like.
So I've had the opportunity and the privilege to have so many conversations with so many beautiful women. And the Lord kept placing it into my heart, you got to do a conference. And how many of you know there's a doubt that come in and it says, oh no, you're too little. You know, your church is too little. You know, you don't know that many people in Omaha yet, Jene. Don't worry about that. After a year of continuously having those thoughts in my head, I realized that I needed to stop making excuses and go ahead and do what God had called me to do, because my passion was now transitioning from just children, but moving towards women. And how could I impact those women with what God has helped me to, one, experience for myself, and how could I change lives with telling other women that they were beautiful, that God made them special, that they each have a purpose, and to help them to seek out what their purpose is and really hone in on it. And so this past year, we did the Women and Teens Conference, WWTC. Whoop, whoop. And so this year, moving forward to really honing in on helping other women, like empowering other women to find out what their purpose is and to love themselves, because they have to love the skin that they're in. God created each of us for a purpose and for a reason. And so with me helping other women, guess what? Women have children. So I'm helping the children as well. And so, yeah, that is what I will be moving into this year.
I think what you ended that with is really important for all of us to understand, because without God's specs, it may appear as though maybe her purpose has changed. But really, truthfully, in everything that she's doing, in some way, shape, or form, she is still impacting children's lives. When she was a teenager teaching Vacation Bible School, she was one of them teaching them. When she was a teacher in the classroom, working with them one-on-one, transitioning here to Nebraska, now having the opportunity to work with those and develop and equip those who are working with the children one-on-one, which still has a direct impact on the experience and the lives of young people and now even here at church with transitioning from leading in the area of working directly with children, because I'm sure you'll still be engaged and involved, if for no other reason than a quarter of the children's ministry, it lives in our house. But transitioning from direct oversight of that to now pouring into and working with developing and equipping those who have that direct access and hands-on experience, it's beautiful to see how the purpose of God for your life has not changed, but has simply matured. And that is the beauty of being able to look at your life through God's specs, from God's perspective, because whatever he purposed you to do, there is a common thread through everything that you have done in your entire life. Sometimes we just got to find it. And some things are easier to see than other things. But if you look with the right perspective, you'll be able to find that common thread between all of the things that you've enjoyed doing in your entire life. And that's one of the reasons why we exist as a church, is to help you on that journey of uncovering that and understanding that. So before we close out, we'll take just a couple of minutes. If anybody has any questions for Jene. Yes, ma'am.
I don't have a clear understanding of what you were saying after not having all of the Kingdom Kids responsibility.
So I will be in charge of the women's ministry.
Okay, let's do it.
And so just to provide some clarity on what ministry looks like at Church on Purpose, women's ministry won't consist of the ladies that are already a part of the church getting together and talking about everybody else. That ain't gonna be that ain't gonna be women's ministry. But it's gonna be the women of Church on Purpose working together to create opportunities to pour into women in our community, wherever they are, whatever backgrounds, whatever affiliation, whatever connections. What you do is not going to be just for here, but it's going to be all for out there. And of course, by doing it all out there, it gives everyone that's here an opportunity to participate and engage. But the goal and the objective is to intentionally and purposefully pour into the women of Omaha, Nebraska. So just so that there's clarity, so y'all don't think y'all fitting to start wearing the same colors and sit in the front rows with hats, and I'm gonna shut up.
Stop. Which is why we have. Which is why
white
we
after Labor
started.
Day.
Stop.
I'm done.
Which is why we had the Purposeful Me conference, which is why we had the Mother's Beautiful Me thing, and which is why we ain't up there, but the brunch and chat at Big Mama's. So all of that is a part of our women's empowerment ministry.
Good question. Any other questions for Jene tonight?
I just have a comment. I just appreciate you sharing your journey and your transparency.
Was that a light skin joke?
Get your brother, get your brother, get your brother. Get him.
Hey, Dave, remember that conversation we had the other day about transparent, translucent, and opaque?
This.
You probably wouldn't be surprised how many times people ask her that question.
Thank you for listening.
Gladys?
All right now. Do that. I would love to.
Yes, ma'am.
So, how did you know when it was time, like
would say I was led to do it, and then kind of pushed, like, all right now, because I had coach to sit down and, go through those questions with me, and help me kind of like sort things out, because I think I was getting comfortable in where I was, where I could like eat, sleep, wake up, and like spit out a curriculum real quick to you, and it was nothing for me to, it wasn't a challenge anymore for me. And this new journey is something that is not only an opportunity for growth, but it's a new opportunity to use what God has already put inside of me, as far as in teaching and just taking it just a little bit further than before. So I just prayed about it. That's it.
And then with Ashley being so wonderful, such a good fit too.
It was so easy.
The puzzle, just the pieces are coming together.
It was so easy. I will say that the kids are my babies, and I don't trust everybody with my babies, and I want to make sure that they are in the right hands. So when God placed her in our ministry, I was like, well, I guess I do got to move on, because she's awesome. This is what she does. And so I look at her like my first lady looked at me, and so many other teachers from our old church looked at me and said, she's young, she's got it, she has the passion, she has the drive. How can I pour into her and nurture her to be the person that she needs to be for this ministry? And so, yeah.
And again, just, along the lines of our theme for this year, to look at that situation with God specs, I don't think in any way, shape, or form that it's happenstance that the first person that would have to transition from one ministry into another would be Jene. Because I believe that in order for us to develop the kind of culture that we need, the Lord challenges us to lead by example. And one of the faults and failures of churches is people getting too comfortable with the place, the position, and the title that they have, and not being willing to release those responsibilities to others that the Lord sends, so that they can use that opportunity to grow, develop, and mature as well. And so then we end up with a very immature body, because we don't provide people with the opportunity to be able to grow.
Right.
And that was when we sat down and had that conversation, and and we talked about this idea of transitioning. I really appreciate Jene, because it was very clear that transitioning into this lead in women's ministry was going to be a challenge for her, although it was something that she was passionate about. And and let that be an encouragement to you. You might be passionate and excited about something, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be super enthused or excited about doing it at first. Because a lot of times your passion is going to paint a picture that is bigger than you think is real for you. And that's okay, because that's why you partner with God, to be able to do things that are bigger than you, that are greater than you, so that he gets the glory out of it, not you. Because you didn't do it by yourself, you did it with him. And by her having the faith to be able to trust him to not only carry her through the new journey, but also to continue to provide for the children that she's already invested in. That's the kind of culture that we need here, where when it's our time to transition, we got to be ready to demonstrate that faith in the Lord, to move out of that seat so that the right person can get in it, so that they can grow and mature and develop, and the Lord can do in their lives what he needs to do. That's how we stay relevant as a church. Okay? And so I appreciate your example. I appreciate your faith through this journey. And I'm excited about for you to be able to connect with others and continue to spread the influence of the kingdom. So last call, any additional questions for Jene before we wrap up? to is, and I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about it, but I want you to make a declaration tonight, and I want you to complete this sentence with as many descriptors as you feel are necessary. Okay? Our children will. And just finish that with whatever you believe the Lord is going to do in their lives to enable them to do. Use as many descriptors as you feel like you need to, and make that declaration tonight over our young people. And as she is doing this, just want to, of course, remind everyone that we will take an opportunity to gather in our reflection groups when we conclude here. So let's be intentional about identifying what stuck out to us the most from our time together this evening, and what we're going to do differently this week based on what we heard. Okay? So, is that enough time, or you need a little bit more time?
I think I can do it.
Okay. So our children will
Apply the kingdom principles that they are taught at Church on Purpose. Our children will stand firmly in the midst of others and declare that they love Jesus. Our children will be leaders and not followers. Our children will be passionate about what their purpose is. Our children will succeed. Our children will be lawyers, doctors, teachers, professors, electricians, business owners, states, the secretary, whatever. Our children will be successful. Our children will know how to pray. They will not stand on their parents' faith. They will have their own faith. Our children will know the Word of God and be able to recite it. They might not know the Bible from the back or the front, but they will. Our children will be able to lead others to Christ. Our children will be disciples of Christ. Our children will be prophets. Our children will be encouragers. Our children will be healers. Our children will be able to see God in their lives. Our children will have a connection with God. Our children will be awesome and amazing.
Amen.
Amen.
It will be. So thank you for your time tonight and for your transparency on this journey. And thank you all for your questions, and also for your comments for Jene. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and transition into our reflection groups. For those of you that have joined us online tonight, we want to say thank you for joining us. We pray that tonight has been encouraging for you, and we hope to see you back here next week with our as we continue this Connecting Church series with our next leader. And we pray that you continue to live each day on purpose. So, as we come to the conclusion of today's lesson, our hope is that it's been both informative and impactful for you. In addition to coming back and viewing this recording again to increase retention, we also want to encourage you to take an opportunity to reflect.
That's right. Here at Church on Purpose, it's part of our mission to help people understand their faith and live it. And one of the ways we do that is by taking time to reflect after each lesson. You can join us now in a period of reflection by simply clicking on the reflection button below your viewer, where it'll take you to a place where you can fill out some information and answer the same questions that we're going to be answering here in the room. Number one, what stuck out to you most from today's lesson? And number two, what do you plan to do differently this week based on what you heard?
Now, if you're watching from somewhere outside of the Omaha metro area, you can stay connected to everything that's happening in Church on Purpose by liking us on Facebook at facebook.com/Church on Purpose, or by visiting our website, www.churchonpurpose.org, where you'll find additional information about the ministry, an archive of past sermons and Bible studies, as well as opportunities to contribute and connect.
If you are in the Omaha metro area, we'd like to extend a personal invitation for you to come and join us on location for either our Sunday Worship and Word at 9:25 a.m. or midweek Worship and Word on Wednesday nights at 6:25 p.m.
We look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, live each day on purpose.